taking baths, showers, washing faces,
cleaning clothes,
quench our thirst,
water the garden,
brushing our teeth, drinking it, and cooking.
and we use it to wash our hands.
Infrastructure in the economy is sort of like your circulatory system or your bones in your body. They're the support systems that hold it together. And just like your bones and your blood vessels and things like that provide services to your body, the sewers, the water systems, the electric lines, the roads are the infrastructure of an economy, and they allow commerce to take place and from people to move from one place to another, or for goods to move from one place to another. If we don't have the infrastructure to get water to people and to get waste away from places where people don't want it, then we simply won't be able to expand. And if I'm a company that's coming to Cincinnati and I want a lot of good, clean water, and I want a lot of access to getting rid of waste products, if Cincinnati doesn't have those resources, I'm not going to come here and invest.
Groundwater, rivers, and lakes.
The sink?
I really don't know.
a water recycling facility.
I have no idea.
Don't come from the Ohio River?
The ocean.
Water is the essence of life. Without clean water or treatable water, humankind would not exist. So the concern for a clean source as well as clean drinking water are greatly related to human existence on the face of the earth. The Greater Cincinnati Water Works is the drinking water utility that provides drinking water to the Greater Cincinnati area and adjacent counties. We have 2 treatment plants. The Richard Miller treatment plant that uses the Ohio River as a source produces about 88% of our production. And then our groundwater facility called the Charles M. Bolton plant produces about 12% of our demand. Out of the 140 million gallons a day we treat on an average, probably very little is actually consumed. Most of our water is used for household needs, the flushing of toilets, washing dishes, washing clothes, washing cars. Seasonally, about 2/3 of our water during the summer is used on landscaping and lawn care. 2 big rules that we deal with in the drinking water industry are the Clean Water Act that regulates what's allowed to be discharged into source waters, and then the Safe Drinking Water Act, or the surface water treatment rules, which then regulate how the water must be treated. And one of the groups of contaminants that the water industry is finding, not only in America, but all over the globe, is anything that we humans put in or on our body that is non-biodegradable will come off our body or out of our body into the wastewater systems, where they are challenged to treat these emerging contaminants, where their eventual treatment discharge is into the source waters. Some of the new treatment technologies that are being developed are focusing on these emerging contaminants, as we call them. We are fortunate in the city of Cincinnati that we have the US EPA drinking water treatment facility in town. So we couple a lot of our work with the US EPA. We do a lot of collaborating on projects to define what is the best and most cost-effective way to remove not only the personal care products and pharmaceuticals, but other emerging contaminants that we're detecting throughout the surface waters. The process that is involved in treating drinking water at our surface water plant is removing suspended solids, filtering the water through sand, then filtering the water through granular activated carbon. And at that point, we've removed contaminants you can see and contaminants you cannot see. And then finally, we disinfect the water to assure that nothing grows in the water between the time we finish our treatment process to the time that the consumer receives the water in their house. The Greater Cincinnati Water Works continually checks the quality of water, both with what we call grab samples and doing laboratory analysis. We do about 600 of those a day. Most of the regulations requiring continuous monitoring focus on finished water and what's leaving the plant. But the Greater Cincinnati Water Works has a very proactive approach where we have continuous monitors throughout every step of the process to continually assure that what we expect to see coming out of this process is exactly what we see coming out of this process. Tap water greatly differs from bottled water. Number one, our water is greatly cheaper than bottled water. Number two is we're required to continually check the quality of our water as it moves through our treatment process. One other thing that makes Greater Cincinnati Water Works better than bottled water is that we have no containers. Sustainability is a very important subject that needs to be dealt with today. To me, sustainability refers to the harvesting or using of a natural resource without depleting or permanently damaging that resource. 97% of the water on the earth is salt water, which is somewhat treatable, but desalinization is the removal of the salt, is very expensive, and you're left with a lot of salt that has to be dealt with, which salt is a contaminant for drinking water. There's a limited amount of water on this earth. And if we do not continually deplete or permanently damage, we can continually use the water and replace it in a sense as we do. So the water cycle plays large into the sustainability of the water that's available for human consumption.
Treat the water,
Wastewater treatment plants like take all the water from like the sewers and the toilets and stuff and clean it up.
get it clean as possible,
They probably go through like lots of filters or people standing over the reservoir with nets or something.
make it safe for us to drink.
I think the average consumer needs to care about clean water because water is life and infrastructure makes it happen. And as a public utility, we are responsible to make sure that the adequate infrastructure is in place, treatment processes are in place to not only support the environment, but to make sure that the water cycle is kept intact. Water starts with rain. Most public utilities use groundwater or surface water. Public utilities that treat wastewater, we discharge back into the local streams that ultimately downstream folks are pulling out of to use for drinking water supplies. The Metropolitan Sewer District is monitored by the Ohio EPA. And Ohio EPA obviously has to follow the guidelines of the Clean Water Act, which is promulgated by the US EPA. When you think about all the different types of diseases, hepatitis, diphtheria, all those types of diseases that used to be pretty prominent in the country hundreds of years ago, wastewater treatment actually has been probably one of the most instrumental advances to public health in this country and across the world.
Wastewater is anything that makes its way into the sewer system, the collection system. However, that could be in the form of residential, agriculture runoff, industry discharge into our system, and each one of those brings along either a different challenge or a different makeup of the wastewater coming in. But in general, wastewater can be harmful to us if not treated, and most likely would be harmful.
The Greater Cincinnati Metropolitan Sewer District has 7 major wastewater treatment plants and many package plants spotted all through the county. The reason for that is the topography. It's impossible for us to easily get the water to one treatment plant. So we have to put our treatment plants in convenient places so that we can make sure that we're reducing or minimizing the amount of digging and pumping that we have to do to get the wastewater to the different treatment plants. Our major treatment plant is Guest Street, located in the Queensgate area. That treatment plant is roughly 130 average million gallons per day, where our other smaller plants are maybe 1/3 or 1/2 of an average flow of 130 million gallons. The treatment process starts when you flush your toilet. The pipes go down through your home, down lateral lines to the main sewer lines, and those main sewer lines go to larger interceptors, and those interceptors come to the wastewater treatment plant. And that's what we refer to as the collection system. I think it's important to remember that a basic wastewater treatment plant does nothing more than mimic what goes on in nature. We take all of the processes that go on in nature and we sort of reorganize them and restructure them so they're more efficient. Bar screens are a lot like the tree branches that are hanging down in the river. Grit removal is a lot like when you are canoeing on a river and the canoe comes to a dead stop right at the end of the rapids. And the reason for that is the water's slowing down. And that water slowing down allows the scouring to stop, and that grit settles out at the end of the rapids. So all of the things that are going on, all of the settling, all of the biological process, everything that goes on in a treatment plant is happening somewhere in nature. Pretty much the rule should be that if you can't dissolve it in a quart jar in 10 seconds, you shouldn't flush it. But unfortunately, people do. It's a big convenience item for a lot of people. Oils, solvents, paints, gasoline, all that kind of stuff, none of that should go down the sewer in any way, shape, or form. If you have trouble removing grease from your pan that you cook in, it's probably going to get stuck to other things. And that includes the pipes in your house, the pipes going down to the street, the wastewater treatment plant itself. If you're cooking with oils or fats, pour those oils off and put them into a can and throw them in your trash can. It just makes things a lot harder on us and will eventually cost the stakeholder more money. We're not paid for by taxes, we're paid for by your water bill. We're not the people that are creating the problem. Because of the smell around the wastewater treatment plant, often we're looked at as the problem. And instead of looking at us like that, we're the people that are on the front lines, that are making the difference, the ones that are cleaning it up. We're the stewards of public health and the environment. Now, we have our problems, there's no question about that. But I don't think there is any organization that does as much as we do for the environment and for public health.
We do. The taxes and government. Maybe private agencies, like somebody who just really care and they got the money to do it.
I think we pay to keep water clean with our taxes. Well, our parents do.
My mama.
When you build infrastructure, the initial cost is the capital equipment, the pipes and things like that. To simply build it is very expensive. To operate it over time is not as expensive, unless, of course, it's starting to age and has to be replaced.
The majority of our system is probably installed in the 1800s. Some portions are probably approaching 150 years old, so you have to upgrade or replace systems that are no longer able to comply with current law and regulations.
The old sewer system, 100 years ago, what they did was they have used the same pipe to carry the domestic sewage, industrial sewage, and the stormwater. So when there is a storm, all the water gets into the sewer line. So now the volume is much bigger. Now if there's a very big storm, the excess it cannot handle. So what we had to do is we had to put some relief. If there was no relief, what would happen is the street would be flooded with the sewage water. The water will back up in the houses and it will go into the basement. The relief points are basically pipes from the sewer. After a certain volume, it overflows into the nearby water bodies. And that is combined sewer overflow. Sanitary sewer is supposed to be carrying only sanitary sewer. It is not combined sewer where the stormwater can get in. It is only supposed to carry sanitary sewer from the domestic and from the industry. But what happened is, because of the old sewer system, there is cracks and there is decay. If there is a storm or something, water gets into it. And when the sewer system cannot control the volume, if there is too much of volume, again, there is relief point and it releases into the creeks and water bodies. So that is sanitary sewer overflow.
The consent decree that the Metropolitan Sewer District is operating under is a federal court-ordered consent decree that is requiring both the city and the county as co-defendants to address the mitigation of sanitary sewer overflows and to reduce the amount of overflow that is occurring from combined sewers. We are currently negotiating with the federal government as to what plan of action or capital program is going to be necessary to meet the requirements to address the consent decree regulations, and we are working very diligently to do it in a cost-effective way so that we can minimize the impacts of rates to the community. So why are we focusing on stormwater? Because every problem that we have in the system, it is a wet weather issue. Dry weather or average day conditions do not cause problems or overflows in the system.
Out at Poke Run and Sycamore, we're at 5 and 7 million gallons a day as an average. That's an average flow. There's days where at Sycamore, that 7 turns into 50 million gallons coming through the plant in one day. Sycamore's under an extensive construction project. When all the construction is done, we will be able to bring 50 million gallons during wet weather events into the plant and treat it It was just time to upgrade the facility. There was a flood in 2001 that basically took out all kinds of automation, really messed with the equipment, really compromised the way that we could treat. At Poke Run, we have, and I'll call it a luxury, a water retention basin. And if the flow gets too great to come into the treatment plant, with 2 million gallon capacity, we can send water back there for 8, 12 hours if needed during a pinch, during a wet weather event. And it actually keeps us from sometimes possibly putting bypass out into the receiving stream. And in this case, it would be going ultimately to the Little Miami River, which is a wild and scenic river, and there's never any good time to put raw wastewater out into a stream.
Why is it so costly for us to deal with the consent decree? Primarily when you think about the size of our system. We have over 3,000 miles of collection pipes. When you count in the factor that we have certain capture rates in terms of volume that we have to be able to comply with, and the enormous amount of cost that is associated with building storage facilities and also expanding treatment facilities, when you think about the magnitude of our system and the scope of our system and what we're required to do to meet the requirements of the federal consent decree, it is a massive program. And when you think about the cost, we're hoping that that cost will be spread out over a long schedule in efforts to minimize the impact on the community.
The cost of dealing with the infrastructure of a city like Cincinnati is billions of dollars. There's an old adage in economics, the consumer pays for everything. Either the users are going to pay for it through increased fees, or if it's supported by, say, federal or state money, the taxpayers are going to pay for it, and those taxpayers are the users of the system. If I'm a resident or a planner in a city that has issues where infrastructure is aging, I've got a lot of questions to answer and a lot of decisions to make that involve trade-offs. And the trade-offs are, first of all, you can pay for it now or you can pay for it later, because we're in a situation now where prices are going up for gasoline, prices are going up for food, prices are going up for all kinds of things. And now we're asking people to pay more for something that's been relatively inexpensive over the years, just like those other things. And so people are going to make decisions about how they want to use their resources. The planners have to make these decisions in a whole different light. They have to think about the current situation and the future. Really, the trade-offs are now and then, and the trade-offs are, what do I want to give up if I really want to deal with this problem now?
The aging infrastructure issue within a water treatment plant and distribution system are very large concerns for all utilities. We continually replace and repair water mains in the ground. Our goal is to replace about 1% of all of our water mains every year, which when you have 3,300 miles of water mains in the street, that's quite a challenge to continue to keep that up. We continue to develop our storage system where we build water tanks throughout our distribution area. So the way we deal with an aging infrastructure is continually spending capital money to improve that aging infrastructure.
If the waterworks and MSD were in it to make money, they'd do things very differently. But they're not in it to make money. They're in it to provide the service and the level of service that is mandated, and they're really not going to go beyond that. Part of their problem is they have to think beyond it. They have to think of capacity down the road. Our systems are adequate 364 days of the year, and on that one day when we get a lot of rain and everything is soaked, then everything's going to overflow. And if we don't have a system that deals with that one day, then that's when people are really going to be up in arms about the inadequacy of the system. The cities like Cincinnati that are a similar age and a similar size have exactly the same issues, and they're going through the same thing we are. Cincinnati's a bit ahead of the curve because the MSD has sort of taken a lead in studying this system, and maybe it's because we're slightly older than the other cities. But a lot of cities are looking to us as a model of how we're going to do it.